sheets there, sign up, and then we'll get them in here, and you'll be allowed to speak when your item comes up. And then there will be a time at the end of the meeting where you can make any general comments that you'd like with the same procedure. So that's how we'll handle that. With that being said, first up is to approve the minutes of the June 27th, 2017 meeting.
Second.
A motion?
Second.
A second. Any discussion or comments? Please cast your votes. And it is so done. Next up is the opportunity to ratify the OCEDT claims.
Move the item.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, and the claims are so ratified. Next are items involved to have individual consideration requirements. And first up, and I think Eric is going to handle that presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have one item for your consideration today that's related to Project 180. It's a unit price or an annual contract that we've just recently gone out and rebid. And so you see that there's 3 bidders. And this is to take care of things like streetlights, traffic signals, some of the electrical devices, all the silver type poles, and a lot of the electrical devices that you see throughout the downtown area. Now you'll notice that the bid from this was from TLS, the low bid. They were our previous contractor, and so we are recommending the award as the low bidder on this new contract. The contract would go through June of 2018, and it has the option for 2 renewals following that. So if we are in need of Project 180 devices, we would use this contract to buy a light pole, a traffic control box. This isn't a fixed contract where it's just for Project 180. We can also use it on other city projects, and so the funding sources would be dependent on the department making the request. Probably most recently, we've used the contract for the installation of some of the lighting and some of the things around the new police headquarters and the new municipal courts. So with those as examples, we're recommending your approval today.
Thank you, Eric. We have a motion to approve. Second, yeah? Thank you, John. Any comments or questions? Please cast your votes, and it is approved. Next item is to receive the Omni Hotel funding plan. Kathy?
I think what we'd like to do right now is to do a presentation about the Omni Hotel redevelopment agreement and funding plan. The City Council considered the redevelopment agreement and funding plan last week, and now it is being submitted to the Economic Development Trust, and then later this week to the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority for their consideration. We'll go to the first slide. First of all, I think we need to keep in mind that the overall purpose of the MAPS projects is to create private investment to match or to catalyze private investment with the public investments that the city makes through the MAPS projects. It was certainly true during MAPS 1, where we've seen over $5 billion of subsequent investment in downtown Oklahoma City following the first MAPS program. We believe that this project is the beginning of that private investment that will come with MAPS 3. There'll be other projects in the future. There'll be housing developments adjacent to the park. There'll be developments adjacent to the streetcar. There'll be projects, we hope, along with the senior wellness centers, for example. But this is probably the first major private investment project that's associated with the MAPS 3 public investment that the city is making. So we're just going to kind of go through the terms of the redevelopment agreement to make sure that you understand them. Councilman McAtee and Councilman Pettis have already heard this presentation once, so they'll I'm sure bear with me and maybe get a little refresher. The parties to the agreement are Omni, OKC, the City of Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, and the Urban Renewal Authority. There will be several related agreements that will be coming forward over the next few months. Those include the Economic Development Agreement that will spell out how the incentives will be provided, a parking easement that will detail how the parking is to be provided to Omni in a new garage to be constructed by the city, and then a room block agreement that will be between Omni, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and SMG, who has been selected to be the operator of the new convention center. The room block agreement is an important component of this transaction. It is one of the reasons why you build a convention center hotel, is so that you can reserve a large block of rooms for conventions and conferences that come to your city. So it was critical that we build a hotel large enough to be able to have a big enough room block for those meetings. The term of the agreement is that it will begin 45 years after the issuance of the hotel's certificate of occupancy. There will be a closing that will take place in about 18 months where the land will transfer to Omni, and that closing will take place either 12 months or after the conditions precedent are met that are a part of the agreement. So some of the conditions precedent that are a part of the redevelopment agreement are things that the city has to do before closing. And Omni was very interested in the city's ability to complete what we called the city projects. And the city projects in the agreement are defined as the convention center, the streetcar, and the park. And then the parking garage is spelled out separately, but is also an important element to them. So we have to provide evidence that the city projects are fully funded, subject to executed construction contracts, and that the city owns the land that the parking garage will be constructed on. The city has to provide preliminary development schedules and provide periodic updates, and we have to take the steps necessary to execute the funding plan. The conditions that Omni has to satisfy before closing include providing us with a preliminary development schedule, receiving all of the necessary development approvals, which includes things like taking the project design to downtown design review, getting all their building permits, any of those other kinds of approvals that they will need. They have to provide conceptual plans. They have to provide more detailed hotel plans, both of which are subject to review and consent by the city. They have to provide a preliminary project budget and then evidence of project financing. Omni does have the right to postpone closing if they see that the progress on the city projects is very much behind schedule, to the point that it doesn't look like the projects will be completed, that the scope of those projects has materially changed, and that the construction is delayed so much that it looks like the projects would not be completed. I think it's interesting because I think we all in Oklahoma City understand that the city finishes what it starts. So we don't really have any hesitation about this. We know that the park will be completed. We know that the streetcar is well underway and will be completed, and that the convention center will proceed in a similar manner. So anyway, in any of those cases, if any of those things happen, Omni also has to believe that that occurrence will materially impact and adversely impact the hotel. Omni has certain obligations regarding construction. Those include that one of the major premises of this project is that the convention center hotel is completed at about the same time as the convention center. We would like for them both to be available to be used by the public at the same time. So they have expressed their intent to coincide with the completion of the convention center and the parking garage. Omni has to begin construction within 6 months of closing. They can delay construction if the development at the convention center or the garage fall behind schedule. They're not obligated to open the hotel until the parking garage is complete and operational. However, they can choose to use temporary substitute parking that would be provided by the city, and there are provisions for that in the agreement. Omni Hotel will provide a completion and performance guarantee pursuant to the timely completion of the hotel. The city's obligations, again, these relate to the city projects, and we've pretty much been through all of these. We have to ensure the continuous operation of the convention center as the city's main convention center. The hotel has to be designated as the city's convention center hotel. Once construction is underway, the convention center must stay substantially in compliance with its construction schedule. The city must provide evidence that the city projects are funded and that the money is held in a segregated MAPS 3 project account, which we can prove today. The city project's conceptual plans have been provided to Omni, and again, we can't deviate significantly from those plans. Omni, again, has obligations for the hotel's operations. Those include that the hotel will be open continuously, that it will be operated to AAA's 4-Diamond standard or to Omni's brand standards. They have to materially comply with the room block agreement. They have to reconstruct the hotel if it's destroyed. And they can only use the property as a hotel for 45 years after the certificate of occupancy, or if the convention center is no longer used as the city's convention center, then they don't have to operate it as a hotel. You can go on. The agreement also includes provisions for parking. The city is responsible to cause the construction of a parking garage. Omni will have access to 450 dedicated parking spaces within that garage, and they will pay market rate for those spaces. Omni will not be obligated to open and operate the hotel until the garage is operational. But again, they can agree to use temporary substitute parking arrangements if they choose to. The city and Omni will have reciprocal rights for each other's spaces. So, for example, if Omni doesn't need all 450 of their spaces, but the city has some big event and would like to make use of those, we have arrangements in place so that we can use each other's spaces if we need to. And then again, the city would be obligated to cause the reconstruction of the garage if it were destroyed. There are default and termination clauses. The parties do have the right to terminate if any of the conditions precedent are not satisfied. If any condition precedent within the city's control is not satisfied after 1 year, or the city wrongly refuses to close, Omni has the right to terminate the agreement, and the city would be responsible to pay Omni $1,250,000 for its out-of-pocket expenses associated with designing the hotel. If Omni chooses to terminate before closing the project, and if Omni chooses to terminate the contract because they believe the project is not economically feasible, they are not due to be paid the $1,250,000. After closing, if Omni defaults, the city will have to notify Omni of that default. Omni will have the opportunity to cure, but if they do not, the city has the ability to enforce the guarantee and requires assignment of the contracts associated with the project to the Urban Renewal Authority so that the project can be completed. And then we can seek damages. One of the things that Omni requested of the city as a part of the agreement was certain restrictions on other properties downtown. The first of those is that the existing Cox Convention Center may not be used as the city's main convention center 1 year after the Omni opens. The city can't permit another hotel on the site for 10 years. They can't permit a hotel with more than 200 rooms for 20 years, and they cannot permit, and they must designate, they can't designate another hotel as the city's convention center hotel for 45 years, and the Omni has the right of first negotiation on the Cox Convention Center site for a hotel. They also required the city to create a no subsidy zone, and this zone is an area that was identified where the city would not provide any subsidy to another hotel for a 15-year period after the certificate of occupancy has been issued on the hotel. We did carve out an area for the First National Center because they do plan to build a hotel in that building, although that project may get underway before the occupancy permit is issued for the hotel. They've also asked that to the greatest extent possible, we preserve pedestrian access along Harvey between the Myriad Botanical Gardens and the new MAPS 3 Park. So the next slide is just an illustration of the no subsidy zone. It is basically Dean A. McGee to I-40, Russell M. Perry on the east to Lee Avenue on the west. One of the features of the redevelopment agreement is that it does spell out the amount of public participation that the city will be required to provide. One of the reasons that we picked Omni is because they are bringing $150 million to Oklahoma City, and the city will provide $85.4 million towards construction. That funding represents about 36% of the total project costs, and as you can see from this slide of more recent hotel projects that have been done around the United States in similarly sized cities, we're in the lower range of the spectrum of level of subsidy that's required for these projects to take place. This is a slide that just talks about some of the public participation for projects in Oklahoma. Just of note is maybe Midwest City, where they own their conference center. Again, that's a feature of these agreements that some other cities have decided that they chose to go that route. Oklahoma City did not want to own their own hotel. The public contribution is $85.4 million. It will be the first money in for construction. At closing and until the hotel opens, again, Omni will provide a completion and performance guarantee. And this just, the funds making up the public contribution have to be held in a separate construction fund by a trustee bank. Omni will be required to make certain payments to the city under the agreement. First of all, they will make a $200,000 a year payment for the land. That is subject to an escalation by the CPI each year. They'll make that payment for 25 years, beginning the 5th year after the completion of the hotel. We did require them to make a minimum tax payment of $1.4 million, and as you all are aware, that's a fairly common feature of all of our more recent tax increment financing economic development agreements. And then we were able to negotiate the ability for the city to receive a hotel percentage payment if the net operating income on the hotel is in excess of $20 million. The city would receive 10% of the excess, subject to a cap of $15 million. The next piece of the presentation is about the funding plan. Craig, do you want to do that part of it, or okay?
All right, so the plan will be, in order to provide for the public participation, for OSED to issue revenue bonds for $85.4 million, and actually will probably issue a higher amount than that to fund a reserve fund, but we'll work through the details of that when we bring that item back to you. But for OSED to issue the bonds will be repaid over a 25-year period, and they'd be backed by a moral obligation of the city. As we do get closer, we probably will restructure this a little bit, working with our underwriters and with our financial advisors, but this is basically the structure that we've used to develop our funding plan. As we look at the project like this, there are many risks associated with a project like this, and as a result, we wanted to build a plan. We had several goals for building our funding plan to ensure that we can weather those challenges and have a strong plan going forward. So some of the goals that we had were to maximize the revenues that are produced either directly or related to the hotel, to be able to provide multiple sources of revenue, both to match our cash flows with our debt service requirements, and then just to diversify the revenue sources so as we do face those challenges that we have an ability to manage through those. We also wanted to use available revenues from other successful projects that we've had so far, other successful economic development projects, and then to structure the plan to include a revenue stabilization fund. And the plan would be that as those revenue sources, the different revenue sources you'll see as we go through the table here in a minute, they have different cash flows, it's different timing of the different revenue sources. As those sources flow through, they would first be used to pay the debt service, and then if there's any excess in a given year, it would flow into a revenue stabilization fund that would build up and then be able to help us in the event that we do come to a year that the revenues flowing in aren't sufficient in that year to cover the cost, and so the cost of debt service. And so then we could pull from the revenue stabilization in the years that we fall short potentially. And so that's how we want to structure this. As we look at the funding plan, so you see all these revenue sources. We've looked at this as a package of revenues, and the plan is structured so that we have diverse sources of revenue in both timing and type of the revenues. The amounts that are shown on each of these different categories, the amounts that are shown, each one has cash flows coming through different multiple years, and we've just taken a present value of those cash flows, so looking at an estimate of how much that could produce for us in a bond issue. The low, medium, and high success are just terms that we chose, really referring to the success primarily of the hotel, but also of these other sources. When you look down the list and look at these other projects, several of them, the revenues that will come in are based upon the success of those different projects. The plan also provides, really, when we look at this, as I look at any one of these revenue sources, we try to use a low to a high success based on what we think is a reasonable estimate for a reasonable range of estimate for all of these revenue sources as a package. So any one of the revenue sources in a given year could fall below what we show as low or be above the high, but we felt like these were provided a reasonable range of the revenues that we would be able to use for the projects. And so I'll just walk through, just briefly going through each one of the revenue sources. The top section looks at the revenue sources that are related to the hotel, and most of them are provided directly from the hotel. We talked about wanting to maximize the revenue sources from the hotel, and when you look at those sources in the top section, a little over 50% of the gross revenues and the cash flows that would come into the program, into this funding plan, would be generated by the hotel or related to the hotel. So the hotel property tax TIF, if you look on the low end and the medium, that is both assuming that minimum tax rate that Kathy talked about. All of Omni's pro formas showed them assuming that they would pay a higher property tax rate than what we have in that medium and low. Our concern was that when they shift from the value of the property to the revenues generated by the hotel, it may drop below that minimum tax for a period, and because of the cap on the tax rate growth that's established by the state, it could take a while to get back above that. So in that medium and low, we just assume the minimum tax rate. So you can see we're trying to be conservative in our estimates here. Hotel sales tax and occupancy tax are just the revenues generated directly by the hotel, and we've looked at differing levels of success. We actually used the high level of success from the pro forma the hotel provided, that Omni provided, and then the medium and low we backed off of occupancy expectations and average daily rate expectations. And then the State Leverage Act, those funds would be available, just like what we've done with the Skirvin project, to match the hotel and hotel occupancy and sales tax. And so we just used the differing levels of success of the hotel from the sales tax and occupancy tax to determine that amount that would be available from the State Leverage Act funds. And then the land payment, on the low end, we just used the $200,000 that they'd agreed to in their payment. There's actually an escalator, and we just used different inflation adjustments for the medium and the high success. Moving down into the lower section with the other existing sources I talked about before, other projects that we've seen success that now have the ability to give back to an additional project. Skirvin lease and mortgage. On the low end of that, we assume that the Skirvin sells in a couple of years, and then we just take the value from the lease and the mortgage that's paid off, escrow that, and then use that to pay down payments. And the difference in value in that, the reason that becomes the low end or the low success, is that the rate of interest that we would earn off our escrow fund is less than what they're paying on their mortgage. And then we just looked at differing levels of success for the medium and high. On TIF 2, we just basically took the values, what's available from TIF 2, that capacity, and the current property values and the values of the projects that are in the works right now that have been provided incentives. And then on the medium and the high success, we used a projection for some growth, additional growth in TIF 2, but still at a conservative level. The Core to Shore TIF, on this, we looked at only at the 499 building, the BOK Park Plaza building. There will be other development that likely occurs over a 25-year period. We haven't assumed any of that in this. And really that Core to Shore TIF will include that area where the 499 is, but also all of the revenues that we're showing that would be TIF'd from the hotel. We just separated those for the hotel at the top section so you see what's generated by the hotel. And in that, we just assume differing levels of values of that building and how it's valued for property tax purposes, and the portion that would be available for the city to use, because a large portion of it is dedicated to the other taxing jurisdictions in that TIF. TIF number 8 is the Devon TIF, and currently the minimum tax payment that's agreed to by Devon exceeds the amount that is needed to pay for that debt service on that TIF. What we assume on the low scenario is that we use the revenues from that for 9 or 10 years. It's got 17 years, I believe, left on the TIF. On the medium and high success, we assume that we could use the full amount of that just to maximize and strengthen the funding plan. And then the Bass Pro lease, we use differing levels of success of Bass Pro. The lease will have to be renegotiated in the next few years, and so we just use differing levels of success and amounts that could be renegotiated. And again, this looks, you can look from $90 million to $134 million. You can see on that low success, we're very close, have a very tight margin of being able to meet our requirements for debt service. And then on the high success, we provide excess money that not only could flow into this revenue stabilization fund, but the funding plan allows for, once the revenue stabilization gets to a certain level, then excess amounts over that could be rolled back into other economic development projects as the Economic Development Trust chose and the council approved. And so that'd be another opportunity. Or that excess could also be used to help pay down the debt more quickly on the hotel. So it just gives us some more flexibility. And again, we look at this as a package of revenues, and it's so important if we look at this package that we want to make sure that we keep all of these revenue sources in, and that we maximize each one of those revenue sources with that ability to roll through the revenue stabilization and potentially either pay down debt and be used for additional economic development projects.
So over the next several months, there'll be several different types of steps that will be needed to implement the funding plan and the redevelopment agreement. There will be TIF project plans that will need to be amended for the downtown TIF and the Devon headquarters TIF. We will need to approve an economic development agreement with Omni, the parking easements, and then in the summer of 2018, there will be an economic development trust bond issue. The underwriting team is already under contract, and so we'll be working on the preliminary official statement and the other documents associated with that over the next few months. I'm going to go, is that it? Okay, in summary, there's a couple of things that we left out of this presentation that we included in the one for City Council, and one of those that I wanted to just talk about a little bit was the economic impact of this project. We hired HBS to do a study of the economic impact that results from the construction of the convention center, both with and without the hotel. So if we built the convention center without a hotel, the increased economic impact in the Oklahoma City economy each year would be $62 million. But with the hotel, it's $137 million. So the hotel creates a significant opportunity to create more jobs, to create more business activity in the economy. It helps other small businesses. It helps the existing restaurants and entertainment venues in downtown Oklahoma City and other parts of the city. So I think that was one of the important reasons why we chose to bring this project forward. The other thing that I really think is important to remember is that the city is not going to own this hotel. There are a lot of other cities around the country that choose to own their convention center hotels. And when they do that, they assume the complete risk to finance it, to construct it, and to operate it. And we believe that this agreement represents a good partnership with a hotel developer, owner, and operator who has the best experience, similar experience in similar size markets, has the kind of consistent leadership, ownership, operational success that we really want for Oklahoma City. So I don't want us to downplay the importance of Omni coming to Oklahoma City and bringing $150 million of their own money into this community and assuming the operational construction and a great deal of the financing risk for the project. So with that, that's the conclusion of our presentations, and we'll be glad to answer any questions or take any comments.
For its jobs, how many jobs will this development create?
During the construction period, it will probably on the average have about 200 construction jobs, but it will peak, I think they believe, around 600 or 700 construction jobs. The hotel will need about 480 full-time jobs to operate. Omni presented at the council meeting on Tuesday that about 70 of those jobs would be managers' jobs, and that the others would be other types of staff in the hotel. The overall economic impact for the project, including spin-off and induced jobs, is probably around 910 total jobs that will be created in Oklahoma City from the project.
Thank you.
Kathy, you mentioned the economic activity that would be generated by the hotel and the convention center. How would you respond to somebody that says, I live in Oklahoma City, but I don't plan ever to go to the convention hotel or to go to the convention center?
Well, I really think Oklahoma City is a little bit unique in how we use our convention center and our convention center hotel. I mean, I have a friend that describes them as it's our living room. It's where we invite our friends to come and meet us. We have our parties there. We have graduations there. We have weddings there. We have lots, this community loves black tie events and fundraisers. So we tend to use our hotels for those kinds of purposes, for big Chamber of Commerce banquets, for the mayor's State of the City message every year, and I think we'll see that here too. And I bet they will come and see the convention center hotel and the convention center because of those kinds of events.
And a good percentage of that income that's being generated is generated out of the pockets of our visitors, our tourists, and our business people who will be coming into town.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is put something together that will induce people, motivate people to come here and spend their money.
Right. And one of the fastest growing parts of our local economy is the tourism part of our economy. And in many ways, those tourist tax dollars are the most efficient tax dollars we can get because they don't use a lot of city services typically.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions or comments?
Are you planning to use the construction consultant just to validate?
We are in the process of preparing a request for proposals to hire somebody to assist us with monitoring the project and helping us review plans and things like that as the project goes forward. If you have somebody who might be interested in responding, please let me know. We're looking for a list of firms.
We need to vote to receive this at some point in time, do we not?
Like to move?
We have a motion to receive? Second. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it is received. Thank you, ma'am. Next up is the redevelopment agreement between Omni and our parties. Motion is second. Anybody comments or questions? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it is so done. Next item on our list is first addendum to the General Record Building Development Agreement. Mr. Bryant.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is an addendum to the agreement on the General Record Building, and what the original agreement contemplated that we could provide the incentive in the form of a forgivable loan, and the developer has elected to take $1.8 million of the $4.7 million that was allocated to the project in the form of a forgivable loan. It'll be a 7-year loan. They'll pay interest on the loan, and it'll be forgiven in 1/7 over the next 7 years. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions from the trustees? We have a motion and a second. Seeing no comments or questions, please cast your votes. And it is so done. Next on our agenda is a joint resolution between the Trust and Myriad Botanical Gardens.
Yes, sir. In our agreement with the Myriad Botanical Gardens, or the foundation, the way we provide our subsidy, when there are savings as it relates to utilities, we keep 75% of the savings, and they retain 25%. There were savings in the last fiscal year, And there were a couple of capital items that did not make the cut for this fiscal year, and they requested that we take those savings and fund some improvements, primarily to the ice rink. There's some new tubing and along with some mats, and so that's what this will provide us contractual authority to provide that assistance to them.
We have a motion to approve. Second, any comments or questions? Please cast your votes, and it is so approved. Next, we have a joint resolution that deals with the new Scissortail Park operation.
Yes, sir. The MAPS Park Foundation has made a request for some additional support to fund a computer system and other miscellaneous costs that they incurred in this last year while they were organizing. And we did not include that in the original subsidy for this fiscal year, and they've come back and we're trying to provide that to them now.
We have a motion to approve. A second, any comments or questions? Please cast your votes, and it is approved. Next up, I think we'll go to you, Ms. Kathy. We've got some economic development opportunities here, do we not?
We do, and I think Mr. Kurt Foreman is going to introduce the project. The first one is with Niagara Bottling for 45 new jobs.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Kurt Foreman with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber and Economic Development Foundation. Happy to be with you this morning to bring forward one of the projects. Excuse me.
This afternoon?
Excuse me. Has it been morning already? Okay. It's tomorrow morning. It's been a long meeting already.
But here it's afternoon.
My day's longer than your day, I guess.
We do listen up here, okay?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Glad to be with you. I have the pleasure today to introduce two, but first, one of the projects we've been working with for a very long time for a new water bottling plant, and we've enjoyed working with Patrick and the team from the company for several months. During the visits, we did a lot of things focused on real estate, utilities, land development, comparing sites and looking at the opportunities. They did a great job in analyzing and engaging, and we had a great team together across the city departments that worked with them and are continuing to work with them. I have the pleasure today to introduce their person who's going to speak to you today, Patrick Drynan, who's with Niagara Bottling LLC. He happens to be out of Wisconsin. He actually is an economic developer who is now using his capabilities to work with this company on a regular basis. He's part of their staff, and he'll share with you a bit of their story, which is a really terrific one.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Drynan, Economic Development Specialist with Niagara Bottling. I know you've got a lot of the company background information in your packets. I'm going to try to be brief and kind of hit the highlights, not only about the company, but about the project that we hope is moving forward quickly here in Oklahoma City. Niagara Bottling is based in California, Ontario, California. The company's been around for over 50 years, family owned and operated by the Paykoff family. Our current president and CEO is one of the sons, Andy Paykoff II. He's been our president and CEO for about 15 years. We're primarily a bottling manufacturer. We bottle water. We can also produce other flavored beverages, teas, vitamin waters, sparkling water products, anywhere from an 8-ounce bottle to a gallon type of product. But our typical product that comes out of our facilities is a 16-ounce water bottle type product. You probably have seen most of our products in the grocery stores. We supply Costco, the Kirkland brand, Walmart, the Great Value brand, and Sam's Club, the Maker's Mark brand, in addition to our Niagara branded products. So the vast majority of the water that we produce is for private label bottlers, and a very small minority is under the Niagara label. We have 26 facilities throughout the North America, including the U.S. and Mexico. We don't have any facilities in Oklahoma, but if we get to the finish line by March of next year, this facility in Oklahoma City would be our 30th manufacturing facility. As mentioned, this was a competitive multi-state search. We looked at Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, multiple communities within those 3 states, multiple sites within each state and community. This is a new manufacturing facility. It's generally about 400,000 square feet. It'll serve a regional customer market, not only here in Oklahoma, but in surrounding areas. The location is in Westgate Park, east of Sarah Road, north of Reno. They are moving dirt out there. I visited the site today, took some pictures, and so things are moving along. Through our process, we did evaluate many things, not only the ability of the community to serve the facility in terms of utilities, a site that would work for us in terms of growth options to accommodate our facility and our operations. But we also considered community fit, how the community and its partner agencies reacted and responded to us, whether we were welcomed. And I am happy to report that the reception here in Oklahoma City has been outstanding, not only from the state level, but also the mayor, his staff, and all other agencies, including the chamber, that's been instrumental in getting us to where we are today. In terms of the capital investment, we are planning about a $57 million investment that includes land, a build-to-suit, new construction, and all the machinery and equipment that would be installed in the facility for a one production line operation. What we typically do is when we enter a community, we build a building that will accommodate future growth. So our bricks and mortar is a little bit larger than we might need right now, but we won't have to go through a bricks and mortar expansion project in the future. We can also always introduce new production lines, up to potentially 4 lines in this facility. So we're already set up for future growth depending on availability of water and customer demand. In terms of jobs, as I mentioned before, we don't have any operations in Oklahoma. This project conservatively would start with 45 full-time positions for the one-line operation. We would hire all those positions prior to becoming operational. And then any future investment or new production lines that might be installed on-site would cause us to hire additional employees, potentially not up to 45 per line, because that does include many of the management positions, but it would include additional hiring. Total payroll would be just under $2 million with those 45 full-time employees. That does not include benefits. So it averages out to over $44,000 in terms of average annual wages. These are all full-time positions employed by Niagara. The types of positions would be all the management team, directors, supervisors, managers, engineers, technicians, mechanics, production operators, and then material handling, shipping, receiving. We don't, this is really a high-tech operation, high-speed production operating machinery equipment, bottle filling, bottle making equipment. So we do require some technical expertise throughout the entire facility. And once we're here, we will be hiring locally. Some of our plant management team may be coming from elsewhere. They may be already internal to Niagara and relocated here, but the vast majority of the hiring would be local folks. When we are engaged in the community, we do land and rely on those local folks that are our employees to identify the needs where we can get engaged in the community, and that's a priority for us, not only at the national level, partnering with various organizations that deal with children's issues, health, and wellness, but also at the local level. We've done community cleanups, created community parks, and educated kids about recycling. So when we do get into a community, we are engaged, and again, we rely on that local plant team to identify what the local needs are. Our mission statement is to deliver an unbeatable combination of quality, price, and service through hard work and innovation. We look for partners and communities that share that same type of mission. And again, I'm glad to report that we found that reception here in Oklahoma City is outstanding. So as I said before, if everything goes according to our plans, we should be hiring in the next couple of months. We should be operational by March of 2018. And then future growth would also always be determined by future opportunity. happy to answer any questions you might have.
Patrick, where do you get your water source?
It would be sourced from the municipality, so we would pay through the utility department for that source of the water. Real quickly, the raw materials for the operation are the typically municipal water source, and then pellets that come into our facility. Those pellets are blow molded into a preform, or created into a preform, blow molded into the bottle shape, filled with the water. We create our own caps. We label it, create it in some sort of case, and then palletize it, and we have it ready for shipping. We don't have any full-time trucking staff on through Niagara. That's all third-party logistics. But everything is vertically integrated in our facility.
So is the quality taste of our water a contributing factor? Because our water is really tasty.
I can say that we always look at the quality of the water. We look at a variety of factors: availability, quality, volumetrically, how much is available. Quality is key. We still do typically run the water through a reverse osmosis system, so we, in essence, would clean it or take out any naturally occurring minerals before actually bottling. But it is high-quality water. I agree.
That comment about the quality of water was delivered by the head of our Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, and
it is something we look at.
a sneaky way to get a commercial in. Very good.
We all do.
Our mayor likes to take credit for the weather, so he's going to take credit for this great temperature we've got right here to build up the demand for your product. So would you please get us some nice cold bottled water in a hurry, because this heat wave is about to kill us.
I would love to. It's kind of tough to take a full case on the plane, but it is warm down here, that's for sure.
Any other questions? Well, before we do that, Brent, would you just give us an overview of the incentives and how it's set up for this project?
Our incentive program is based on the minimum of 50 jobs or overall annual payroll $1.75 million. They qualify with their almost $2 million annual payroll. It also considers the amount of investment, and it's about creating primary jobs. And the primary jobs are jobs that provide a good or service that are created here, that are sold outside of the area, and that brings the wealth back to our community. So. And the company earns those incentives? It's a performance-based that we will enter into agreement with them that will pay out the $225,000 over a 5 to 7 year time frame, and it's truly performance-based. If they don't perform, we will not pay them. Thank you, sir. Do we have we need a motion?
He moved it. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it's approved. Welcome to Oklahoma City. And how close to you are you from Green Bay?
I live in the Milwaukee area, so it's about a 2-hour drive.
Very good. Okay. Well, welcome.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next up is Kathy.
Again, Kurt Foreman with the Chamber to talk about our next project with North American ATK Corporation.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Nice to be with you. We are here for the second of two today, and this is the kind of project that we come and talk to you about regularly. It's the kind of projects that the SIP program and the way the city has set itself up to support businesses. So these are the outcomes of that hard work. Today we have both a new company to town, but also an existing employer to town that is growing. And we have with us today Travis McNett. He's the plant manager at LKQ OKC. They operate for the business purposes as North American ATK Corporation. They are an auto parts remanufacturing facility, and they also are focused on the west side of town. And Travis is here. He is a Oklahoman, long time, excited to be with the company, and here to share a bit of their story with you today as well.
Good afternoon, Chamber members. I'd like to briefly discuss LKQ and its umbrella of companies, briefly discuss ATK transmission, and then what we do. Next slide. LKQ was founded in 1998, and over a series of acquisitions, they've grown to over 40,000 global employees, and 18,000 of those are in the U.S. We have a national presence of distribution, manufacturing, and warehousing. And recently, in May of 2016, we became an S&P traded company. Next slide. We provide a number of products for the aftermarket automotive industry, and some of those you can see of those pictures. We provide specialty parts for different vehicles. We provide paint, truck, and OE, or original equipment replacement parts. And we service the nation with different products for different types of services through heavy truck, light automotive, and other types of vehicles. Next slide. ATK was founded in Grand Prairie, Texas, and it was a part of a 1936 engine rebuilder. It was very, very large when it began, and over a period of years it's grown through acquisitions. And in 2011, they provided their engines in Bellingham, Washington. And so it's grown over a period of time with just a lot of acquisitions as well as growing the organization. And then in 2017, we decided that we needed to launch a remanufacturing business for transmissions. And the reason that we did that was the only thing that we weren't providing to the aftermarket service due to the complexity of a transmission. And so there was several reasons why we were waiting. We spent about 5 years reviewing that process of should we purchase or acquire another company or launch a new facility. And so we chose in June to develop ATK transmission, and then recently after that we actually acquired a company that actually does that. So it was kind of one of those things that just happened. It came to us and we decided that we needed to go ahead and purchase a company as well. Next slide. So our site selection process was through Texas, across America really. There's several large manufacturers remanufacturers of transmissions, and there's also a lot of smaller ones. And so after looking through the different companies and things like that, we noticed that Oklahoma was more suited for what we needed to do because, one, the talent within the Oklahoma City area has been here since 1945. Several large remanufacturers are here. ATC Drivetrain, Fred Jones started here in the 1940s. And so there's a number of companies here that actually provide or have the talent and have built the talent over a period of years. And then also it's centrally located, so we chose to use Oklahoma City as our base to start this business. And so we've expected to launch our first transmission in the third quarter of this year. So it's a fast timeline, but we're really looking forward to that. And our capital investment roughly is about $2.3 million or $2.5 million, excuse me, for equipment and machinery and things like that. And we're actually building out 3,000 square feet of officing for our new facility, and we're using an existing building and building out inside of that. We'll have about 43,000 square feet when we're fully operational, and we're setting that up at this time. We have no current employees in Oklahoma. We are currently, there's 4 of us actually living in Oklahoma City right now. We're actually out of the Dallas area, but we expect to hire our first person in the next few weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. And over a period of 3 weeks, we'll have 76 expected employees, direct labor. Next slide, please. So that will add about $3.1 million of labor to each year when we're fully operational in year 3. And we expect to see job classifications as managers, engineering, operations, and warehousing. Transmissions are typically complex, and so it requires quite a bit of talent. And so the engineering and operations people really have to know what they need to do. So anyway, we are definitely involved in, we will be involved in civic opportunities in the future as we launch and become more stable with new employees and things like that. But at this point, we're still focused on launching our program and our new facility. We have partnerships with Francis Total right now. We've been speaking with them about training and things like that, and also the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance. I've been a part of their operation for about 5 years, and so I'm involved with them. And we're definitely involved with community. We believe in community and family, and we want to promote that within our facility as well. Next slide. This is an example of our business. This is just one line that we're setting up right now, and you'll see it just provides disassembly, washing, and assembly processes, and then final testing. This is our layout for our first line, and we're buying the equipment and designing the equipment to do this. We've taken about 15 or 20 years of experience across different disciplines to be able to develop a line that's efficient, that will provide a high-quality product, and that will service our customer well. Next slide. This is an example of the complexity of our product. There's over 300 different parts in a transmission. We have to take them out, clean them, inspect them, and then install them, and then test it and make sure that it meets or exceeds original equipment specifications. So the definition of a remanufactured transmission versus rebuilt is we actually take it back to original equipment specifications or better. And so it requires a significant level of talent to be able to do that in engineering. Next slide. Our mission is to provide value-added, to be the leading value-added manufacturer of transmissions across America. And we want to build strong partnerships with our employees as well as our community. We are purchasing equipment that will basically put our wash systems on dialysis so that we don't put things down the drain that shouldn't be going down the drain. And so we can actually filter bacteria out of the water to be able to do what we need to do here. And so we'll improve our ability to increase cost effectiveness as well as use less water over a period of time. And then we're wanting to install LED lighting to reduce our carbon footprint. We've got all electric material handling equipment instead of gas for inside our warehouse. And we believe in reusing and recycling anything that we possibly can, or remanufacture. We take parts out and salvage good parts, and that's what we do. And so we want to reduce the ability or reduce the waste stream basically through improved methods like the dialysis of our water and coming up with creative ways of manufacturing and remanufacturing. As I extend my presentation. Any questions?
Okay. Why the acronyms, or what do they stand for? ATK, LKQ.
ATK was actually started by 3 gentlemen,
Okay.
and I don't know their name.
LTK.
ATK.
ATK, okay.
Yes, LKQ means like, kind, quality. And so as you buy an aftermarket product, you will get a like, kind quality of product that you got out of your vehicle. It will be very similar, or it will be better. And so that's what LKQ means.
Who are some of your current customers?
Well, we have customers across the nation. They're mostly people like you and me, that we need a transmission or an axle or something like that for our vehicle, and we don't want to necessarily pay a brand new price. So LKQ provides that opportunity for people to be able to go find a very good part and meet their needs to be able to put their vehicle on the road.
Do you physically have retail sales, or do you go through auto parts?
We have retail sales sites. In fact, we have one here in Oklahoma City called Keystone Automotive. It's actually down on Reno. And so they sell several $1 million worth of parts to walk-in customers every day, and we have those across the nation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Right, you're going to you know what I'm going to ask you?
Yes, sir, I want to make a clarification that Yukon is based on the zip code
Thank you.
that is located in the Oklahoma City limits, so.
You know what we're talking about? Your plant is in Oklahoma City, even though your mail was delivered to Yukon.
Yes, we've had this discussion quite a lot, so
Okay.
we understand it's right on the line.
And then the community involvement,
Yes, sir.
you want to make the president of the Chamber of Commerce happy, so be involved in Oklahoma City as the community. Right, Rhonda?
We're
Okay.
definitely a believer in that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Review first, Brent, the incentive package.
This is an incentive package of $75,000 for 76 jobs. It'll be performance-based, just like the previous one. There'll be no money up front. We'll structure an agreement where they will be paid over a 5 to 7 year term.
Comments or questions from trustees?
Second.
Please cast your votes. And is approved. That brings us, I think, to the end of our agenda. Are there any comments from staff? Any comments from trustees? Has anybody turned in, any citizen wishing to be heard? We are adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance.